G'day and welcome back to RC Model Reviews. Today I'm going to be looking at this. You can't see it? Hang on, I'll hold it up. The Tundra. Tundra from HobbyKing Durafly, which is a HobbyKing brand. The Tundra, it's really big as you can see. Look, goes right away across there. And it is billed as a STOL model. It's short takeoff or landing. It says here, it's got to, go to the site, read the blurb, there you go. It flies on wheels or floats or optional skis. And everyone's been really excited about this because it could be quite a cool plane if it lives up to the expectations that HobbyKing have created for it. So first of all, I'm going to look at how easy it was to put together, and I've made some notes here, so let's just go through them. First of all, it was really well packed. This is a pretty solid box, and I don't think anything is going to get too banged up in shipping, which is important because nothing worse than waiting all that time, spending all that money and finding the box arrives and it's all buggered because someone sat on it. So excellent packaging. The foam inner is really quite protective, just like the FMS Super Easy Trainer I reviewed a little while ago. Now, nice that some of the parts inside, like the wings and the fuselage, are covered in a foam wrap. That thin foam's almost like a fabric, but it's foam, which stops it from scratches and blemishes, although I did have a little scratch on my cowl. I'm not bitching about it though. So the product came really well, preserved and protected from all sorts of things going on inside. Now, one thing I noticed, as it says in the instructions, and the instructions are pretty good, you've got to admit, they've done a printed instructions and it's got glossy pages and pictures and all sorts of stuff. You've got to exercise the hinges on the ailerons and the elevators and the rudder to make sure everything moves smoothly. You don't have to exercise the flap hinges because it's got real hinges because they're barn door flaps. They actually drop down as well as, they actually move out a little bit as they drop down, which is really cool. So they've got real hinges, no worries there. Now, a few points I noticed when I unpacked it all. Now this is a STOL aircraft, so it's designed for short field takeoffs and landings and for rough contours, maybe look at the size of the wheels on this thing. You'll see, whoa, you could take off in a forest that big, which is great. And what it does mean is that you're going to be able to take off from long grass quite easily because it's got a big 12-inch carbon fibre prop. That'll mow you a runway as you're moving along. And so you'll be able to take off in relatively long grass. But one thing I have a reservation about is that this model, unlike a Cub, comes with counterbalanced control surfaces. What that means is there's a little bit of the rudder and the elevator that actually go in front of the hinge line at the ends. And that, in the full-size model or full-size aircraft, that's designed to relieve the amount of load on the control stick on the plane or on the pedals because the air effectively helps push the rudder around and push the elevator up and down as you deviate it from center, which is great. It's not necessary on a model because our servos are way more than powerful enough to cope without the counterbalance, especially on a slow-flying, lightweight model like this. And the problem with counterbalances, I know because I fly 3D models and a lot of those have counterbalances, if you're flying in long grass, the grass gets caught in that little gap where the counterbalance, well, the aerodynamic counterbalance comes out. And it's a pain in the backside. So I see that HobbyKing have allowed for this because there is carbon inserts in the elevator and the rudder where it would be most likely to break off if a piece of grass got caught in there. Very good thinking. Good work, Durafly. Now, what have I got here? I had to make a few changes during the build. One thing was, there's no point in having a short takeoff and landing aircraft if you don't have enough throw on your elevators and your rudder. That's very important. And out of the box, this just didn't seem to deliver too much in the way of elevator throw. The reason for that is the little post into which the control rod goes is not at the end of the servo arm. And as you can see in this picture here, the rudder one which is on the right, I've left the post where it was out of the box, that's sort of halfway along the arm, but on the elevator one on the left, I've moved that right out to the end. That gives me plenty of elevator throw. And that's important if you want to do short takeoffs and landings. You need lots of elevator. So I made that little change. Perhaps I didn't have to, but I found the throws were anemic without it. And what else have we got in my list of things to do here? And this is interesting. They include a little Phillips screwdriver because there's quite a few little Phillips screws you've got to use to put this model together. It's nowhere near as simple a build as the FMS Super Easy Trainer because there are a myriad of little screws, 2mm and 2.6mm screws you've got to use. And they give you a Phillips screwdriver, which is great. But I think most people have already got a Phillips screwdriver. The one thing they don't give you, which most people don't have, is a ball tool for putting the little plastic push rods onto the ball joints on the horns. I would much rather have seen them include a ball joint tool than a Phillips screwdriver because everyone's got a Phillips screwdriver, but not many people have the ball joint tool. So just a little something they could look at. Now, one thing I also noticed is that EPO is a great material, but doesn't always lend itself to great accuracy when it's being molded. And I noticed that after I put the elevator together, one side isn't the same angle as the other side, even though I followed the instructions exactly. If you look carefully, you'll see that one of the counterbalances is up or down, while the other one is even. So there's a twist in the elevator. Not really worried about it. It'll probably, I'll live with it. It's not going to make too much difference to the flying of the model, but it's just a little point. It's something to be expected with EPO as a material. Now, I noticed they come with an extra bit of kit here, which is the tailplane brace kit. It's pretty obvious that there may be some weaknesses in the tailplane area if you're doing some heavy landings and short field takeoffs, because it takes a hammering. The tailplane does take a hammering, especially in long grass, as I've already mentioned. So they've provided a strut kit which will give it some extra rigidity. And it is something else to catch in the grass, of course, because it's hanging down below the tailplane. So it'd be nice if they'd made that a bit stronger, but only time will tell as to whether that's really an issue or not. I'm going to fly it without the tailplane reinforcement kit to start with, and if it starts to look like things are getting a bit sloppy and bent and broken, I'll add the kit, and hopefully that will fix it all up. Now the wheels are EPO or EPP, I don't know which it looks like EPO, could be EPP, it's hard to tell. I'm not going to try and find a chemical analysis, but they're foam wheels, and that is great if you're flying off grass or other soft surfaces, but if you're going to fly off tarmac, you might find they wear out pretty quickly. I don't know. I'm not going to fly it off tarmac because I don't want to risk it. Certainly the paint would come off for a start, but I guess you could always put a rubber band on them if you were going to fly off a hard surface like concrete or tarmac. And they're certainly big cartoony wheels, which is great. That's one of the things that makes this aircraft look really good, is that the bush tires that come with the thing. It's really great. If it had just little tiny anemic wheels on it, it would be so ugly, but it certainly makes it look a whole lot better. Now, you might think, well, this is a STOL aircraft, will it stall? And Durafly have done something really good with this model. They've incorporated some washout in the wing. And what's washout? Well, washout is a change in the angle of the wing and the pitch of the wing, the incidence of the wing, so that the tips are operating at a lower angle than the center of the wing. And why is that? Well, it means that when you come up to the stall, when the model pitches its nose up and the angles increase, the center of the wing will stall before the tips do. And that's really important, because if a wingtip stalls before the rest of the wing, that's when a model will drop a wing and it will spiral into the ground, and it's really hard to control. You've got to build up airspeed and get it flying again. By having a washout in the wingtips makes for a very, very predictable model with a very, very gentle and controllable stall, which is exactly what you need for short takeoffs and landings. Now it comes with an FPV setup. There's a plywood frame you can build up and use for your FPV camera and video transmitter. Personally, I'd actually rather have seen them just throw in another piece of foam like the one they've got for the canopy, because it makes the plane look pretty ugly when you've got the FPV set up on it, and I would like to just sort of carve out the foam and put my camera in so that only the lens was showing through, and mount the rest of the gear inside. That'd be great and look really nice and still look nice from the outside when you're FPVing, but that's just me. Maybe, you could probably buy a spare canopy. They've got a good, speaking of which, there's a good listing of spare parts in the back of the manual. I certainly hope that HobbyKing stock up on those parts, because people who buy this are probably going to push it to its limits and you'll break something. It's just the nature of the game when you're trying to do really cool short takeoffs and landings. And the carbon propeller, now it comes with a carbon propeller. It's real carbon. It's not just a fake sticker on a plastic prop. It's real carbon. But there's a bit of a problem, because carbon is well known to people that use carbon props. Carbon can be really hard to tighten onto the prop shaft. And in fact, when I went to put this prop on the shaft of the motor with the Tundra model, I couldn't tighten up the nut because the prop would spin, and there's no part of the motor bell you can grasp because that's within the cowling. So what I ended up doing was making up a little washer, a little soft washer that fits behind the propeller, engages with the back of the prop driver, and then engages with the back of the propeller itself, so that it would key onto it and I could actually then tighten up the nut. So you're probably going to have to do the same thing, which is a bit irritating. Now, as to whether a carbon prop is a good idea, obviously it's going to be pretty efficient, it's going to be lightweight, but given the hard landings and things, it's going to transfer most of your landing or your crash impacts directly onto the motor. It may bend the motor shaft, and you may break the prop, because carbon doesn't bend, it just breaks. So it would have been nice to perhaps have a plastic prop as well, just even if people are just getting started, so they can find the limits of the model without risking their expensive to replace carbon propeller. And always, I love models that come with two props, because you're going to break one eventually, so it would be nice if they threw it, even just a plastic one as a spare, because if you buy a new Tundra, you take it out, you fly it around, you break a prop, you're going to be mightily peed off if you have to wait for a week or two to get a replacement prop. I'll tell you that now. Now, there's nothing inside to retain the battery. There's a huge space in this model. It's got massive cavernous internals for putting batteries in, and you can put the battery right on the center of gravity. So this is great. I think they say 1800 to 2200 3-cell batteries. So, certainly you could fit several of those in there. And if you really wanted to, you could load it up with quite a big battery. I'm pretty sure it would carry the weight. But to be honest, I'm going to test fly this with a Zippy 1800, and I'm also going to try it with the new, the new Graphene 1300s. And no, it's only 4-cell. Can't do that. Never mind. I might try 1300 3-cell, because one of the key things in a short takeoff and landing model is weight. This thing weighs about 950 grams dry. That means without a battery. Everything but a battery. It's with a 8-channel FrSky receiver. And so I'm thinking that, with a lightweight 3-cell battery, a high C 1300, it would be so floaty and so easy to fly. But we'll find out, because I'm going to test it with that and with an 1800 and with a 2200. I'll tell you what I think about the effect that battery weight has on this model. Now, something that really made me laugh while I was putting it together was this little piece out of the manual where it has fault finding. If something's not working right, you look at this piece of the manual, you find out the bit that's not right, you look at the solution, and you fix it. Well, it says here, if the model goes backwards, then you've got the prop on backwards. Oh, of course, no. Who wrote this? Honestly, the person who wrote this has never played with a model, have they? Really? Because I think we all know that if you have a model and you turn the propeller around, it doesn't reverse the direction of the thrust. If you put the prop on backwards, it just makes less thrust because the prop is running backwards, but it'll still blow in the same direction. So that is patently wrong, which is a bit disappointing for a model or for a manual that looks so good in every other respect. Yeah, there you go. So those are the points that I've basically discovered during the build. The model is now ready to fly. So I'm going to throw a battery in it. I'm going to find someone with a camera who can hold the camera, and let's go and see just how well the damn thing flies. Okay, so here I am. I've got my Tyrannus all set up here, and I've got the flaps on the slider. Look at that. So beautiful. Flaps all ready to go. Only problem is, I don't think I've got a camera person or a spotter. If I don't have them, I can't fly.